Hi, I'm Dr. David Gruder, and I was the co-founder and first president of the Association for Comprehensive Energy Psychology, ACEP. And I'm here today to have a conversation with one of ACEP's most treasured members and innovators, Dr. Judith Swack, who developed one of the members of the energy psychology family of methods called Healing from the Body Level Up. Thank you for being with me today, Judith.
It is my honor, David.
Yeah, we've been looking forward to this, haven't we?
Yes, we have.
Yeah,
Because we're here to really, spread healing through the world and raise consciousness and get to the next level.
indeed. Now, you and HBLU have a very interesting and, in my opinion, unique place in the energy psychology family of methods, and we're going to be unpacking all of that in our brief conversation here. And where I'd like to start with is the background that you bring to having developed HBLU in the first place, because your background is unique among energy psychology innovators. So you want to say a little bit about that?
Right. Well, I have a PhD in biochemistry and years of postdoctoral training in human immunology. So I really am a biomedical scientist who sort of walked into healing backwards and then got called to develop a method. So it's always been my opinion that mind-body healing needs to be reproducible. So I brought my scientific mind into that field, and I basically started using techniques that I'd learned from neuro-linguistic programming. Then I learned Callahan's techniques for thought field therapy. And then I, basically started adding muscle testing and other techniques. And every time I added something, I would test it on my clients as my laboratory experiments, and they were all grateful guinea pigs. And I would find out what worked and what didn't work. Now, what's really interesting is that tapping works for a lot of things, but there are places that it doesn't work. So I was always interested in, okay, what's missing? Then I would track that down. I'd ask 1,000 questions. I would start mapping patterns and developing laboratory protocols that you could follow, step 1, step 2. So all of my manuals are like lab manuals. You come and you follow the instructions and you get the results. So I started out by treating trauma and phobias, which were easy. And then over the years, I've expanded into transforming personality structure. We use the Enneagram model of personality. And then some of my clients came in and said they had curses and other supernatural things. And I'm like, what's that? So I had to study that and develop a menu of techniques for that. And then people came in and said, I have a dysfunctional family and I'm really suffering from those kind of patterns. And I'm like, oh my God, what? So I started studying dysfunctional family system patterns. I developed methods for that. Then it expanded into cultural and religious brainwashing and gender brainwashing patterns. I mean, whoa. So after almost 4 decades in the field, I'm still learning new things. I'm still adding to my menu. But basically, I tell people we can cover anything from a simple phobia to religious and cultural brainwashing in 1 to 6 sessions, let's say.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
Exactly.
and people say, what do you mean by clear? I say, it goes away, it never comes back, it's not a problem anymore, forget about it. And they're like, oh, I like that.
Mm-hmm. And of course, the thing that you're really talking about here is protocols that are replicable, protocols where you've been able to train other practitioners to utilize the protocols that you have fine-tuned, and they're able to produce reliable results using those protocols when a particular protocol is what's called for, just as you're able to.
Right. I actually have students, colleagues of mine, who actually do HBLU better than I do. I'm serious, they're just geniuses. You see, the thing about HBLU is that the practitioner is the facilitator, and the client's soul leads the healing. So we access the client's soul through muscle testing. We call it the deepest wisdom. And we muscle test and we ask the client's deepest wisdom, what's the highest priority goal? They tell us. Then we ask how much interference there is on the goal after getting permission to work on the goal. Then I have a menu of 300-400 different kinds of patterns. So we muscle test through the menu, what's the highest priority pattern interfering on this goal? Then I have a menu of 52 different techniques. They're not the only techniques I've ever learned, but they're the ones that work in minutes and are easy to do and don't require equipment. And so then I ask, what's the best technique to use for this problem? Where is it in the body? We apply the technique, it disappears, it's gone, not a problem. So when my colleagues come in, they've trained in many different things. I'm thrilled about that because I say, put it on your menu. Because a lot of times people, I've trained in 100 different things. I don't know what to use when, or what would be the best thing to use in this case. I said, put it on your menu and muscle test the client's deepest wisdom.
So there are a couple of things that you're saying that I want to really slow down and really unpack almost in slow motion, because they're very important criteria or dimensions of what makes HBLU such a unique member of the energy psychology family. So the first of those two things that I want to make sure that our listeners are very, very clear about is that nothing happens in HBLU without consultation with the client's highest wisdom.
Deepest wisdom.
Deepest wisdom, highest wisdom, the essence being that this is a deeply not only client-centered and deeply client-respectful approach, but it is respecting the client at their deepest level of awareness. Or I use the word highest because my perspective about HBLU is that it's a profoundly spiritual approach.
That's true.
And this is not something that you do in HBLU as a sort of token thing at the beginning of a session. This is a checking and rechecking and rechecking throughout the course of the session to make sure that every step that's being utilized in any given session is being guided by deepest wisdom, that the session's not getting hijacked by other influences. Right. So that's a unique orientation in HBLU. The other piece that I want to unpack in what you were saying is that HBLU is an integrative approach, meaning that, yes, you've developed a really large compendium of procedures for identifying and then intervening with a whole bunch of different patterns that have not been identified the way you have in other methods. The thing that I really want to be very clear about in our interview here is that your entire protocol is integrative in the sense that it includes everything that a practitioner already has or will add in the future to their tool belt. Yeah. And it adds, of course, HBLU's own particular add-ons to what's on practitioner tool belts, but HBLU provides a structure that enables practitioners to potentially use anything that's on their own tool belt, on their client's tool belt, in their client's higher spiritual resources tool belt, perhaps in a referral sources tool belt. It includes the universe of options. And that's built into the fabric of HBLU in a very well-developed and unusual kind of way.
Yeah, I feel that it's very flexible because I'm not restricted to using one technique. Basically, the client shows me, we make stuff up, we make 100 guesses. That's how I build it. And HBLU actually created itself because people would come to me with problems and issues and techniques and tools and give them to me and say, Judith, I want you to use this, or Judith, this is important, or Judith, I think you should add this to your protocol. They'll stand over the book and go, add this to your protocol. I write it in while they're standing there. Thank you very much for the addition. Right? Yes. And so my clients have co-created this. My colleagues have co-created this. It's a living, breathing thing.
Yes.
Very cool.
It's very cool in being living and breathing, and it's very cool in its inclusivity. So that's marvelous. And just as a side piece, so our viewers know this, you first trained me in the first levels of HBLU as we record this now, almost 20 years ago.
Wow.
It was about 1999 or 2000 when I first started attending your training programs. So I've watched your approaches evolve and wizen over 2 decades now. And even more deeply, I've watched you wizen over these 2 decades, because you've not only had an empirical approach to evaluating effectiveness in the lab, in real situations with clients, but you've been your own biggest guinea pig.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
And you're a testimonial to how valuable HBLU is, because you have emerged into your goddess energy as a consequence of your diligent utilization of the very things that you're doing with other people.
It's true. I treat myself for something just about every day. I really do, because I think that people should use the tools they have and be fully resourceful and really keep themselves stable and in balance. I have to say, I'm a whole lot happier these days, right? Yeah. And my life works much more easily. I manifest things more easily. I'm comfortable inside myself. Yeah, I'm a lot happier. And I expect that from my clients. If I can do it, they can do it. And I know how to get there now, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So, and it's a joy for me to share this with people.
Mm-hmm. And it's a testament to how replicable these methods are that you're pointing out that some of your students actually are even better at HBLU than you are, because that is evidence in and of itself that the methodology is bigger than the founder. And that's right. What makes it a legacy piece. It makes it capable of continuing to be used in perpetuity long after you and I are gone.
Well, that is my actual hope. I hope that HBLU becomes standard of practice throughout the world, in the next decade, 2 decades. I don't care. I want to help people eliminate suffering easily and quickly. I think the more robust a method, the more options you have for tools, the more understanding you have of patterns, the less people have to suffer.
Yes. And that brings me to another thing that I think is very important for us to touch on in this conversation, which is what I have long referred to as the 80 by 80 by 80 rule. And it's not that these numbers are arbitrary. They're not literally, statistical facts, but just as a mindset piece. Standard energy psychology methods, the basic foundational energy psychology methods, in my experience, and I'm trained, as you know, in almost every member of the energy psychology family, basic energy psychology methods work essentially on 80% of problems with 80% of clients about 80% of the time. That's what I mean by the 80 by 80 by 80 rule. And again, I want to emphasize that's not a literal statistical fact. It's just a mindset about it.
Okay.
And what that brings up, of course, which is central to HBLU, is what do you do with the rest? What if the 80 by 80 by 80 rule doesn't apply to this particular client around this particular issue in this particular session? What are you going to do then? And that's where HBLU shines in a very, very big way. So say something about that piece of HBLU.
Well, that's really what turns me on. It's like, oh, that didn't work. Well, what could it possibly be? And from there is where the HBLU expanded. So, for example, I noticed that we were using tapping for trauma. But then I would ask, what's the root cause of this trauma? So you can clear the trauma, but there was a root cause that set them up. Well, for example, betrayal trauma. So you clear betrayal trauma, you can do that with tapping, but there's a root cause, and it was a dysfunctional family system pattern. You know, the ancestors betrayed each other. You look back 3 generations, they betrayed each other, right? The bad relationships, abuse coming down through the generations. Well, it's a family system pattern, and you didn't clear the family system pattern just because you cleared this one trauma example of it. So it's going to keep regenerating itself until you clear the whole thing. So then I had to develop a method to map and clear dysfunctional family system patterns, and tapping does not work on dysfunctional family system patterns. You actually have to go to God energy for that, and you have to use prayer. You have to use that kind of level vibration to clear those system patterns, and you have to see the pieces. It took me a while to stretch my mind to see all the interweaving, gears and pieces in dysfunctional family system patterns. And since I was very good at geometry, I like to look at a pattern as a geometrical shape, and then I like to see where's the center of it, that if you pull out this thread, the whole thing collapses. Right? So I had to get spiritual, because you have to use that kind of energy for dysfunctional family system patterns. I also used it for brainwashing patterns, right? Gender brainwashing patterns, family system brainwashing patterns, religious brainwashing patterns. Tapping does not clear that. You have to use a prayer intervention. So basically, healing from the body level up works at the body level, obviously, which is trauma. The unconscious level, which is, a zoo in there. Then there's the brainwashing is in the unconscious mind. Then there's the conscious mind, which is your rational mind, which doesn't know what's going on most of the time and is upset about it. And then there's the soul level, which contains your personality, and we use the Enneagram model of personality for that, and other identity structures. And then there's the mission, your soul mission, and
yes,
and everything else. And these patterns run at different levels. You have to have the right tools. But it took me a while to see the big system patterns, because I couldn't quite get the shape. There was so much activity. Then I finally figured it out. Oh, you get it here, and that's what you do. So that was really that about 15 years ago, that finally came in. And the interesting thing is, I had clients complain to me, Judith, I want you to help me with dysfunctional family system patterns. And I'm like, yeah, but I don't know how to do that yet. Well, Judith, you figure it out. Now, people yell at me. Figure it out. I'm like, all right then. I have to.
So instead of necessity is the mother of invention, hollering is the mother of invention.
Oh, that's actually true. There was the time this woman came in and said, I have addictions to food, and I binge eat sugar like 5 days out of 7, and then I have a hangover for 2 days and start all over again. And I said, well, I don't really know the addiction patterns. Then she shouted at me, it's the worst problem of my life, and you will figure it out. So I'm going to tell you, 9 sessions later, 0 addiction, 0, nothing.
With no recurrence.
No recurrence.
So let's unpack these pieces, because they're also incredibly important for our viewers to anchor in their understanding of HBLU. First of all, you're taking a very pragmatic approach, which means simple is great when simple works, and you don't want to make to do an intervention that's more complicated than what's called for.
Right.
And that's just common sense, but it's common sense that's really built into the fabric and the structure of HBLU. At the same time, when the simple stuff doesn't work, HBLU has a massive safety net for identifying and addressing whatever it is that's causing the simple stuff to not work.
Right.
And that is at a root cause level. It's at a level that I have started to refer to as traumability, meaning that there is something in us that is susceptible to turning undesired life experiences into baggage, into traumas. And if all we do is clear away or get free of the baggage or the trauma itself without addressing the traumability level, the root causes that make us susceptible to converting undesired life experiences into lasting baggage and trauma, then that predisposition is just going to be searching for a next thing to attach to and express through.
Absolutely.
And so what HBLU is designed to do when the simple stuff doesn't work is to pinpoint the source or sources of that traumability, that root cause generator of current and future and past traumas, and pull that out by its roots. And that's one of the unique aspects of HBLU.
Yeah, I have a really fascinating example. I'm going to stick out my neck for this. I had a woman who came in who wanted to lose weight, and she, overate. And it was compulsive. So, she had food addictions. So tapping didn't work to stop the addictive behavior. It turns out that what was driving the behavior was original sin brainwashing. So she was Catholic, need I say more? And she believed that her soul was evil and sinful, and therefore she had to suffer in order to get to heaven. So she was an image point. She was an Enneagram 2, meaning beauty is everything, and how people see her is everything. So if you're an image point and you're ugly, meaning fat, then you suffer terribly. So the best way she could think of to cause enough suffering to get herself to heaven was to stay fat.
Yep.
So we cleared the brainwashing about my soul is evil and sinful. So she didn't have to live her life of suffering and work really hard at suffering in order to get to heaven. That whole story erased, bang.
Yeah.
And then she went out and lost weight.
Yeah. And didn't just lose weight, but kept it off.
Yes.
Right. So this combination of ingredients, the integrative approach, the empirical research-based attitude, the replicability, the root cause piece where there is just massive safety net, like I was saying, for what to do when the simple stuff doesn't work. All of these ingredients are, and also to just recap, working from the client's deepest wisdom at every turn and working at all levels, the body, the unconscious, the conscious, the spiritual, the mission, purpose levels, all of those levels, not leaving, there's no level left behind, if we can put it that way, is what makes HBLU a method that is so robust that any practitioner who understands that serving their clients requires them to be able to go way past the 80 by 80 by 80 rules so that they can effectively address complicated situations in virtually any client. HBLU gets to be that integrative framework that enables them to utilize everything in their tool belt and a whole lot more that HBLU adds to their tool belt, so that they can be the practitioner that their clients need them to be
Oh,
all of
there
the
you go.
time rather than just some of the time.
Oh, that's perfect.
And this is part of what, in closing, figured into you receiving an award from ACEP, an Association for Comprehensive Energy Psychology Award in 2019 for what?
Major contribution to the field of energy psychology.
Because HBLU is a major contribution to the field of energy psychology. And that's really the takeaway that I want our viewers to get from this video, is what HBLU adds to their tool belt and their capabilities to assist their clients when the usual stuff is simply not enough.
Exactly.
So
Thank
thank you
you,
so much for allowing me to interview you today, and more to come, because like you said, HBLU continues to evolve and expand and wizen as time goes by.
Thank you, David.
My pleasure.